What's up everyone, it's ENDYMION, and oh boy do I have some stuff for you today surrounding the new Star Wars movie. If you thought things couldn't get worse, I promise you by the end of this, you'll be convinced otherwise. From the director of this upcoming nuclear slop just telling on herself publicly, a podcast guy getting really mad at male Star Wars fans, and this other story that Dude, let's just get into it, my god. A friend of this channel is a fellow YouTuber named WDW Pro. He has scoops on a lot of things Disney, and according to his insiders, and man, it looks like Reys Future is going to be even worse than we thought. According to Pro, he has had two potential script details leaked to him that show two very different but possible futures for episode 10. I figure I'd tell you what he said, and I quote, "So there are two iterations of the Reys script that I am aware of that I can talk about according to rumor. And those are apparently early on in development. The idea was that Rey would be pregnant with a child, and that off-screen she would have become pregnant somehow through the Force ghost of Kylo Ren in a way that would have been explained but not present on screen. They could not have Rey be pregnant with any other person than Kylo Ren, and that was to placate the Reylo fans out there. And then the story was going to push forward to when her child was about 9 years old, a daughter. And that daughter was going to be training in the new Jedi Temple with Rey and with the other Padawans. That this 9-year-old daughter was going to combine the light and the dark and then form a new type of Jedi. And then they were going to face off against, is it Darth Plagueis? Well, apparently he was going to be back, and so that was the first iteration of the script," end quote. Before we move on to the other possible script, can we just stop here for a second to decipher how utterly insane this all sounds? Leave it to Disney to find a way to run out of original ideas almost immediately when making a new Star Wars film. I do want people to be reminded that it was confirmed that Disney did not have a plan for the sequel trilogy whatsoever. They barely even had a design document or anything. They just made the movies as they went along, and that's why The Last Jedi feels like a completely different movie than Awakens. And why Rise doesn't feel like it connects to Jedi at all, cause none of these movies had a plan in mind. They were all fast-tracked and created as quick as possible so Disney could monetize and profit over their $4 billion purchase of Lucasfilm. This new film is also being fast-tracked as well in the same way that trilogy was too. So you can bet your little Ewok butt cheeks that this potential future trilogy will have even less planning than before. And let's circle back to that whole Rey being pregnant thing again. That's just insane. Not only because it would be something done to satiate Reylo fans, but because it proves that Disney is creatively bankrupt as well. The sequel trilogy was just a rehash of the original Lucasfilms, but worse. I mean, Force Awakens is literally A New Hope again, but with different characters. And now with a blank slate in front of them, their bright idea is to rip off The Phantom Menace. Great. This plot synopsis proves that Kathleen Kennedy and her army of yes-men are incapable of creating anything new or exciting. Instead, they'll just look at what was done before and then remix it, but with a Force is female paint job instead. So Kylo Ren, who's dead as hell, will clap Rey's cheeks from within the Force, and then impregnate her the same way Anakin's mom was in the beginning. They're doing the Chosen One Jesus story again, dude. Like, come on already. Then let's not forget the casual name drop of Darth Plagueis, who fans thought Supreme Leader Snoke was meant to be originally. For those unaware, Plagueis was the Sith Lord that chose Palpatine to be his successor. He's a really old and powerful Sith who, through the power of the dark side, was able to cheat death and prolong his life. But of course, because of the whole rule of two that the Sith live by, eventually Palpatine would have to betray his master in order to succeed him because, you know, they're evil guys. I don't know, I didn't write this. But a lot of people, myself included, thought Snoke was going to be Darth Plagueis, and it would have made a lot of sense too, since Kylo Ren even refers to Snoke in the movies as wise, and that was always something Palpatine said about Plagueis too. But because these movies are made by morons, of course they went ahead and then cut Snoke in half. And then it turned out, well, Snoke was actually a puppet all along. But I guarantee you, if J.J. Abrams had made the entire trilogy, Snoke would have absolutely have been Plagueis. So now, like everything else Disney does these days, they're course correcting and trying to salvage what they can. Which is why Plagueis could be the next villain here, and honestly, out of anything here, the only thing that remotely interests me is Darth Plagueis. But knowing Disney, they'll ruin him, and of course this apparent baby Rey has is a girl because who are we kidding, what else did we expect? But this is not the only script of course, so let's see what else might happen, and it seems Disney has cold feet about this first iteration. So they have also danced around another angle, which is, and I quote, "They did not feel that that would quell the complaints about Rey being a Palpatine and they didn't want to fool with that. There were also concerns that Daisy Ridley's character was a side character and that her daughter would be the lead and that was going to be an issue. This first script didn't really have a lot of oversight from Disney executives beyond Lucasfilm. That one, where Disney became involved, that involved Rey and Finn fighting against a villain, a new villain, who was a combination of a Night Sister and a Sith. So a Sith who had learned to take the powers of the Night Sisters and combine the Force with the magic of the witches. And that Rey and Finn would be combined together to take on that foe. I'm also told that Grogu would make a cameo in both of these scripts, but that Grogu had been scaled back dramatically due to needing to save him for the Mandalorian movie and because of the change in production and releases related to the strikes that were going on." End quote. This second idea sounds far less interesting and honestly could easily be incorporated into the first script idea with ease. If you don't know what a Night Sister is, Merrin in the Jedi games is a part of this order. They're basically witches who control spooky powers that let them do stuff that's very similar to the Force. Also, Morgan Elsbeth in the Disney Plus series Ahsoka was also a Night Sister, but she's dead as hell. Just make this Night Sister an agent of Plagueis and voila, you have your Darth Maul-esque threat for Rey that exists besides the main threat of your story. I'm honestly surprised Disney wouldn't make this bad guy a straight white male. But then again, I'm sure if Plagueis does exist in this next movie, he'll absolutely be played by someone like that anyway. Pro also states that Disney is worried that this movie will not increase the marketability or sales of Rey-inspired merchandise, which is likely the case. Because let's be real, nobody really cares about Rey. She's the most forced main character in cinema and has largely been rejected by the fanbase at large. I want to remind people that Rise of Skywalker made less than half of what Force Awakens did at the box office. That's a really bad sign that your finale couldn't capture even half of your audience that you started with. And now we're, what, 5 years at this point removed from that finale, and the cultural significance of Rey has been reduced to represent everything that's wrong with entertainment today. Of course, you'll have people who will defend this sort of garbage, and unfortunately, it's someone this time that I've referenced in the past for other videos on Scoops. This time is John Rocha of the Hot Mic podcast. Here's what he thinks of male Disney Star Wars fans. Take a listen.
I swear to God, men, reach down into your pants, find your fucking balls and your cock, and be okay with it. We can take a woman directing a film in Star Wars and live. We're all gonna fucking survive. I swear to God, you guys want to come off like you're tough motherfuckers and you're a bunch of wusses. Finally, a woman gets to direct a theatrical feature in Star Wars with Rey, with other women leading the way. And there's nothing fucking wrong with that.
It's sad to see John Rocha taking this stand, but what are you gonna do, I guess? Look, I think I'll speak for many when I say that we're not weak in our masculinity when it comes to Star Wars or characters like Rey and so on. The reason so many people are against this is because the people in charge, who are largely women by the way, have made it evidently clear that they hate the male fanbase. It would be one thing if Star Wars was on top of the world right now and had the same level of cultural significance that it had way back in the day. But then they said, hey, a woman is making a movie, but if the brand was golden still and there was actual public trust, I think fans, even male ones, would be receptive and open to the idea. But the truth is anything but this, unfortunately. Kathleen Kennedy, who runs Lucasfilm, she openly hates men. She has torn down every male character in every project she's done since running Lucasfilm. Indiana Jones, Willow, Luke, Han, Kylo, Finn, Poe, Snoke, dude, the list keeps going. She doesn't care about the male audience because as far as she's concerned, men are akin to, I don't know, cattle in her eyes. We exist simply to fund and fill her pockets. She sees the male audience as beneath her, and like I said, if the brand was glistening with amazing reviews and content, this would all be a different story. But to sit there and say men are the problem is proof that John is culturally out of touch and unaware of why the fandom has abandoned their beloved Star Wars in the first place. We don't mind female characters in Star Wars. If that weren't true, then characters like Princess Leia or Bastila Shan or Mara Jade would have all been rejected. But the truth is that all of those characters listed and more have been accepted with open arms and become fan favorites to say the least. There's a difference between injecting female characters for the sake of it, like Rey, or making actual three-dimensional characters that have more to them than what's between their legs, like Leia or Jade. Maybe John Rocha is just pandering so he doesn't lose his Disney exclusive access badge or something, but man, I promise you this is not the way you want to go. Nothing you say in defense of Lucasfilm or Star Wars will be worth the mass exodus you'll encounter by shilling for corporate masters. The fandom is not wrong. They have every right to be upset and angry over how Star Wars has been treated. This culture war doesn't exist for no reason. It's because the people in charge have made it very clear that they believe we're the problem, when without us, there wouldn't even be any franchises to support to begin with. Never attack the fans, dude. I'm sure that rant on your podcast may have raised your social credit score for Disney, but to everyone else, you just clowned on yourself. The best you can do is apologize and try to do better in the future, I guess. Or you can double down and maybe Kathleen Kennedy will send you a Forces female shirt in the mail, I guess. Regardless, if you ask me, men are not the problem here, and it has everything to do with one singular person, a woman in this case, at the center of the storm. And because of that woman, we have another woman with similar ideals and agendas in power too. As you may already know, this episode 10 will be directed by Sharmeen Oberoi-Chinoy, a Pakistani filmmaker who is known for documentaries and not really blockbuster films. Of course, people will say, well, give her a chance, she could be amazing. But all the roads are pointing to the opposite because there's been another clip unearthed, this time from that Star Wars girl, and well, give it a listen.
I think at the heart of everything, I am a storyteller and an activist. And my body of work over the last 20 years has been guided by my activism, and every single piece of work that I've ever created has a piece of activism in it. It could be very overt or it could be covert, but it is there. And I think that as a storyteller, I'm not sure if all of you know this, but I'm not a trained filmmaker. So I never went to film school. I went to Smith College and did my undergraduate and studied economics and political science like a good Pakistani girl. And then I did my graduate studies, but also in international politics. And so I am an accidental filmmaker.
So as you can see, your new Star Wars director openly admits live on stage that she is an activist first before she is a filmmaker. She admits that everything she makes is political and will be stuffed with messages no matter the movie or show she's doing. She admits that first and foremost, the message matters to her more than the actual filmmaking itself. I would love for John Rocha to watch that clip and tell me with a straight face that this woman will not ruin Star Wars. Like, are you serious, dude? She even admits that she never went to film school and everything she makes is to supplement her activism. I should also remind people that the only Disney product she's made prior to this is Ms. Marvel. And if you unfortunately watch that show, there's an entire segment of it where Kamala Khan ends up in the past due to the quantum nonsense of the bangle she has, and she's basically surrounded by fleeing refugees amidst the whole Britain-India conflict. This entire moment of the show felt out of place and largely felt like the show went from being about a superpowered girl to suddenly turning into a pandering documentary film out of nowhere. And again, it's because Sharmeen Oberoi-Chinoy was responsible for the Ms. Marvel show, so it's no wonder this show about a girl who can make fists out of light because of her magical bangle suddenly had to take a detour to Activism Town in the show. And this is what I'm talking about. You're going to absolutely see Star Wars Episode 10 be filled to the brim with activism. And like Chinoy states, it may be right in your face at times and in others it will be more subtle, but it will absolutely be there no matter what. Because she's an activist first and a filmmaker maybe third or fourth. And when you're making a movie in a series like Star Wars, you shouldn't be hiring people who have no background or experience within that world. Star Wars was always meant to be the prime showcase of the greatest minds behind various industries coming together to make movie magic. The best in CGI, the best in practical effects, set designs, props, you name it. What Star Wars needs right now is someone who knows what they're doing and knows how to make a quality product that will blow the doors off cinemas and sales. The last thing Star Wars needs is another feminist activist who doesn't respect the property they've been tasked with using, and only views that universe and its lore as nothing more than a vehicle to insert their agenda within. Sharmeen Oberoi-Chinoy is like every other woke activist that has ruined everything else you know and love. This woman, honestly, is giving me The Witcher Netflix vibes, and I mean that in the worst way possible. Just like how The Witcher was ruined by people who hated the source material, this is what Chenoy makes me feel when I hear her speak. She seems to have no interest in Star Wars, she cares little for the Force and probably doesn't even know who Darth Plagueis even is. All she needs to know is Plagueis is a space version of an evil white man in her eyes, and she'll nod and go, "Got it, I know who this is now." You're a moron if you believe Chenoy and Kennedy have any idea how to make this movie work. And if Kathleen Kennedy is willing to ruin Indiana Jones, Willow, and Star Wars already with a terrible track record she's had, what makes you think that this will be any different? These Hollywood types, especially ones in control over massive franchises, refuse to ever admit when they're wrong. They'd rather burn down the entire studio than stop and admit that they might be going about things the wrong way. And remember, like Chenoy, the entirety of Disney is infested with like-minded activists as well. And anyone who could have made a solid Star Wars film is long gone and removed from the franchise or entire studio as well. What I want to make very clear is that if you think this time will be any different, you are not only a fool, but you're blind to the rot infesting this world. And if you think Disney has it in them to make a great Star Wars movie in this day and age, I have a couple of cans of farts I can sell you since you seem stupid enough to believe anything. This film will have Rey preparing the Jedi Order. Anything Disney comes up with here is just them taking what Luke should have done, but they're putting a feminist paint job on it. Ultimately, what I believe is that platforms like Star Wars or Marvel in general should never be used for activism. They should only be used for entertainment and to bring people together to enjoy quality escapism. We have enough crap to worry about already, and knowing 9 out of 10 times I go to a theater I'll have some message being rammed down my throat, it makes me want to avoid cinemas like the plague, and turning Star Wars into another activism-filled corpse is the last thing that we need right now. But I think with everything presented here today, we can all confidently agree that this movie is not what any of us want. And I'll be amazed if this makes even half of what Rise of Skywalker did at best. And the more likely scenario is we see another repeat of, say, the Marvels failing, but on an even bigger scale than before. Then Sharmina Boyd Chenoy will call all of the Star Wars fans racist and claim they are not ready for a woman to shape Star Wars. Then Kathleen Kennedy will run damage control and push all the media outlets she has in her pocket to incite articles that feed her narrative over that of the fans. And you'll all be painted as sexist monsters who hate women of color, and then this will delay Star Wars films another 5 years. Until we, yet again, have the same shit happening until one day hopefully KK leaves and the brand can finally heal. Activism will kill the entertainment industry, and unfortunately, it's filled to the brim with these sorts of people. And all I can say is that we must resist, even if a new film releases with the music you know and love. Just know deep down that it is not Star Wars anymore. It is simply a vehicle in order to push an agenda. But let me know what you think as always. Do you want a pregnant Rey who gets raw dogged by a Kylo Ren Force Ghost? I can't believe it's a real sentence, but there you go, I guess. Or what about this activist director? Is there any hope? Let me know as always. Like, subscribe, and share the video if you enjoyed it, and thanks to my patrons as always. Make Star Wars great again, and I'll see you in the next one.